Hey everyone, Derek here again. I'm here to bring you another video for our Walking Dead countdown to the season 5 premiere. If you're watching this video, it means that we are 47 days away from the upcoming 5th season. And as I said, when we got to the 51-day mark, I was going to do episode reviews. Since we're down to 47 days, that means we are on the 5th episode, which was Wildfire. Wildfire was the 5th episode of this first season. Definitely is a great episode. You know, all the episodes of season 1 just do a very good job of setting up the story. They had a lot of action, a lot of drama, a lot of good storylines that they set up. And that's really why it's a great season overall. Really was excellent. So I'm going to be doing my episode review on it. And again, just in case you're not caught up with Walking Dead, you're just starting it for some reason. If you have not seen this episode, please do not watch as it may contain spoilers. Okay. So the reason why the episode is called Wildfire is because at the CDC, when Dr. Edwin Jenner is basically making a video log of his progress of doing research, he says that Project Wildfire was declared like 100 some days ago, which basically, from what I understand, is what they called the zombie virus per se. That they discovered it. And I mean, obviously, it hasn't been 190 days since the outbreak. I just think that, you know, since it was declared, basically either it was at some other part of the world it was discovered, or it was contained at first, but then it got out somehow. So that's my assumption. But basically, that's what they refer to when they say wildfire. Back at the camp, you know, back at the Atlanta campsite, definitely a lot going on. You know, they just had the attack. Amy was killed. Ed was killed. Several other survivors are killed. Basically, anybody who was a background character was killed. And at this point, you have our core, you know, group. They're getting their dead buried. You know, they're basically dragging the bodies away. They're burning some of the bodies that were walkers. And basically they're set to burn all of them. You know, Daryl and T-Dog were prepared to drag this one body of one of their members of the camp there, and Glenn basically stops them and says, "No, we bury our people. We don't burn them." And I think that was, again, that was them signifying respect for the living, respect for everybody that they had, and that they're going to give their group members a proper burial. I mean, they kind of understand that, you know, you can't really bury 100 bodies. It's kind of sad that some of the walkers, you know, didn't have family that were there to bury them, that they weren't alive to get a proper burial. But that's just the way the world is, you know. Some people get fortunate and some don't. So they do hold a burial for the members of their group. Now, at this point, remember, Amy was killed in the previous episode. And so she's laying dead on the ground, her body's there, and Andrea's basically been sitting over her, you know, watching her. And everybody's noticing that, and they're very concerned because, you know, Amy could get up at any moment. And basically, she's not letting anybody near Amy's body. And they don't want to walk her going through the campsite, you know, biting more people. So basically, Rick is about ready to go over there and tell her, "Hey, this is how it is. We got to put her down." Goes out there, and Andrea basically points the gun at him and goes, "Whoa, whoa, hey, I know how the safety works now. Don't mess with me." So, you know, Rick backs off. You know, he's not going to mess with them. And definitely was a touching scene between Amy and Andrea. And basically, what I think Andrea needed was a little bit of closure with her sister. So I think that's why she wanted to wait for her to come back. Because I think that part of them still believes this time that when the walkers come back, that they're not necessarily all the way dead, that maybe they do recall some of the things about their previous life. I mean, it might, you know, we really don't know. I mean, but I think that she wanted that closure. You know, Amy does, you know, open her eyes and she's starting to, you know, regenerate. And Andrea basically leans over and says, "Hey, you know, I love you. I'm sorry that I wasn't there for you when you were a kid. You know, it was also Amy's birthday that day when she was dead." And basically, you know, Andrea just wanted to have that final moment. And then, very interesting, like the moment that like Amy kind of like strokes Andrea's hair almost. Definitely was like one of the, you know, most interesting moments because it's like, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? You know, do walkers actually remember something? Which, you know, Dr. Jenner later says that they don't. but you just never know. And I mean, it's definitely was weird, like that scene, but it's also very powerful, definitely a very emotional scene for both Andrea and for the TV show in general. It was a great moment, very well done. And Andrea does end up putting down her sister once she starts to, try to bite. So the group basically holds the burial. Um, Dale basically tries to help Andrea put Amy's body in the ground, but Andrea doesn't want anybody to do it. Dale definitely was affected by this because he tells Andrea before Amy comes back that they were the first people that he ran into. When this all started, he watched over them. He thought of them as daughters. He definitely cared a lot about them, and he was very sad to see Amy die. I definitely think it was very hard on him. Also, probably the biggest development of the episode is while they're getting the bodies all, taken care of, Jackie notices that Jim is bleeding from his shirt, and Jim just tries to shrug it off, but um, they start to realize, like he was bit, and eventually they do grab a hold of him, pull up his shirt, and do reveal that Jim was bitten during the campsite attack, which is consistent with what happens in the comics. I mean, in the comics, he was bit on the arm, I think, but nonetheless, Jim is bitten, and we all know that when someone is bitten, they die and they become a walker. Excuse me. And a lot of people are wondering, well, what do we do with this, with this situation? They haven't really dealt with that. And Daryl's all set to, just put the pickaxe in his head right then and there so he doesn't become a walker, become a threat. And Rick's like, no, we do not kill the living. Definitely a very powerful statement. Also one of the first really ethical decisions that they really had to make as a group. What do you do when somebody's bit? Some groups may have a policy of, hey, if you're bit, boom, you're done. We know you're dead. We're not gonna, drag you along, feed you, and take care of you because you're dead. You were bit. But other groups are more, sensitive about these situations, and they were willing to help Jim. They wanted to preserve life. Rick and Shane and everybody else other than Daryl really was set on, no, we don't kill the living, put the freaking pickaxe down, and we're going to figure this out. And Rick thinks that, well, maybe the best solution is to go to the CDC in Atlanta because they were working on a cure there. He remembers what Morgan told him in the first episode, that the CDC was trying to work out a cure, and maybe they have, and maybe they've actually been working on this. Maybe they can help Jim, and that's what Rick wants to do. He basically wants to do the right thing and help Jim because Jim is a member of their group. Jim is important. So basically, Rick is pushing to go to the CDC, and Shane's not so hot on the topic. He thinks that the best bet is to go to Fort Benning, which is a fort that basically is like an army fort. He's thinking there may be a refugee camp there, people that can help them. They can't just be out in the open. I think everybody starts to realize that now, is that they can't just stay at the campsite because the walkers have found them. It's very clear walkers could find them again. They don't have a lot of ammunition to, hold off another attack. God only knows how many walkers would be in another attack, and they need to find safety. Shane actually tries to go through Lori, basically trying to use Lori to tell Rick not to do this, which Lori would definitely have a big impact on Rick. I mean, if Lori told Rick to do something, Rick might be more willing to do that because, she's his wife. But Lori's not having any of it. Basically tells Shane, hey, don't use me to try to get your ends done. Be a man. If you want to take care of something, take care of it. So Shane and Rick end up going off into the woods, looking for, making sure there's no other walkers, checking to make sure that nothing's gonna, threaten the camp. And they have a talk, like Shane basically is telling Rick that he doesn't think the CDC is the best option, and Rick keeps trying to, get him to agree that it is the best option. And, Rick says he's doing this just for his family. He wants to keep his family safe, and if Shane had a family there, that he would feel the same way, which definitely offends Shane. And I can understand why. I mean, Shane, risked his life to keep Lori and Carl safe. We don't really know all the family that that Shane does have. I'm pretty sure that he has a grandmother, I think, that they were talking about in the first episode, because Rick was like, did you steal that vase from your grandma Jean's house? So he might have had family. We don't know, though. We don't know the extent of Shane's family. And he decided to protect his best friend Rick's family, and he thinks of them as family. And Rick's saying that, Shane doesn't have the best interest in his heart for them definitely offends Shane, a lot, which we can understand. Um, and basically, I think that Shane at that moment, is realizing that, with Rick back, he has no chance with Lori. Their relationship is back on track. And there's a moment where Shane holds his shotgun up at Rick while Rick's walking out into the woods. And there's a moment where we see that Shane's like thinking about it. He's thinking, hey, I can shoot Rick right here, right now, and that's the end of it. And I could get Lori back, and I can get Carl back, and everything would be just like it was before. But he can't bring himself to do it. He cannot bring himself to fire the gun, which is good. I mean, at that moment, it's nice to know that Shane, he had a bad moment. And I mean, a lot of people in a Walking Dead world would. You think you're going to do something that could definitely have a lot of consequences, could definitely be a drastic decision, and he decides not to follow through with that. But Dale sees him do this, and Shane tries to laugh it off, like, I thought he was a walker, and, we really need to get reflective vests, but Dale knows exactly what was going on, and, it's definitely a big moment that sets those two at odds later. Dale does not like Shane. Dale feels that Shane is a big threat to the group, that he only has his own interests in mind. He could get people killed because he's reckless. But I think in order to kind of like set himself right with everybody else in the group, to kind of maybe make Lori a little happy with him, as well as to keep Dale, happy. He doesn't want Dale, spreading rumor about what happened. I think that's why Shane eventually does agree to go to the CDC. So they basically do, they end up going to the CDC. Now on the way there, the radiator hose breaks down in the RV, and as well as we lose group members before they leave. Basically, Morales and his family don't want to go to the CDC. They have family down in Alabama that they want to go to. They said, hey, I got to do what's best for my family, and I want to go down there and be with my family while we're figuring this thing out. So he and his family separate from the main group, and the rest of the group goes to the CDC. And before Rick leaves, Rick's actually been talking. He kept his promise to Morgan once he got the radio back to call him every morning, which Morgan doesn't pick up. Rick basically tells him that he found his family. That he hopes that Morgan's okay, and he tells Morgan that they're going to the CDC to try to help Jim and just to try to find out why this happened. So he leaves information for Morgan, basically to help him out if Morgan would decide to come down. So basically, again, the radiator hose breaks in the RV. They're stranded, and Jim is basically inside the RV, and he is suffering. I mean, he's been hallucinating a lot. He has fever, he has cold shivers, he's throwing up blood, things like that. I mean, he's definitely feeling the effects. And he flat out tells everybody, he's like, every time you move the RV, it feels like my bones are breaking like glass. I mean, he's definitely hurting. And he tells Rick, I want you to just leave me at the side of the road. I appreciate that you guys risked your lives for me, that you were willing to help me out, but I can't do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to suffer anymore. Leave me by the side of the road. I'll die, become a walker, and maybe I can find my family. And the group's like, well, what do we do? And again, this is another ethical decision. What do you do? Because you're just leaving the man to die. And that's just something that maybe humans don't want to do. But different people in the group have a different opinion. Lori basically she agrees with Jim. She says, hey, this isn't your guys' decision. It's Jim's. Jim can make his own decision up, and it's not your guys' decision to, overrule him. Dale also agrees with Jim. He basically, earlier he got cut off when he was trying to tell the group something. He says, no, like, what I'm saying is that maybe we should give Jim what he wants. Jim is a man. Jim is an adult. He can make up his own mind. And Jim has made his decision. He doesn't want to, suffer anymore. And that's his call. And, Jim is able to basically, tell them that. He tells Rick, this is not your failure. This is not your fault that this happened. And I don't want you to take on a burden for me. I'm going to accept my fate. So they do end up leaving him on the side of the road. They say goodbye, and it's pretty much assumed Jim obviously does die. Either probably soon after they leave, and becomes a walker. We never see him again, so who knows? Maybe he does end up finding his family as a walker, and they walk around, for the next few years. God only knows, but it was definitely a nice way of setting up ethical decisions that you're going to make. Because again, Walking Dead world is not an easy world to live in, and you're going to have to make decisions that you may not feel like you want to make, but you have to. And they ended up making a decision that would affect anybody in a normal world. Like if I had to leave somebody, like if somebody's dying on the side of the road and I just leave them, that's a crime, or that's just inhumane of me to do that. But in the Walking Dead world, it may be something that you have to do, and it makes sense. So before the group gets there, you have Dr. Edwin Jenner, who is the only person left at the CDC. He's basically trying to find a cure. He's doing test samples on this tissue matter that he dubbed TS19, which is basically the sample number. He's conducting tests, and he ends up falling asleep, and he accidentally spills some chemicals on the sample, becomes a contaminated area, and the CDC has this computerized, system that can basically do a lot of different things, and it ends up blowing up the room, pretty much incinerating any thing that was in there. So basically, all hope is pretty much lost at this point for him finding a cure. And Jenner basically gets on the computer and says, because he's been keeping a log of his progress, basically says, hey, yeah, the TS19 samples are destroyed. What the heck's the point? And he says, I'll probably kill myself tomorrow. He's definitely a downtrodden man. He's down on his luck. Everything he was working for is done. And then Rick's group shows up, and they try to get in. They realize that it's sealed shut, and they realize as a group that it's a lost cause, and they go to leave, and Rick sees the camera moving and basically just starts pounding on the door, yelling at the person to open it up, saying, hey, you're killing us if you leave us out here. We're people. We have no food, very little gas. We need help. We need help. And for some reason, I think maybe it was because he didn't want to see anybody else die. Perhaps Jenner was feeling lonely. God only knows. He may have had a lot of reasons for doing what he did. But he decides to open the doors and let Rick's group in. And that's the end of the episode, is the doors opening. Big bright light coming out. And you're definitely interested to see what's going to happen next. And tomorrow I will have the next review up. And again, I want to thank everybody who's been watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. I have a lot more videos coming out. I have a lot of other topics. If you have any other suggestions, feel free to leave them. Feel free to leave any questions or comments. I'd be glad to answer them for you. We are 47 days away. I'm getting real excited for the season, and I want to thank everybody for watching. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.